Is Africa losing control of its own media? Let's find out. Now, some of you may not know, but there's a company called MultiChoice Africa that controls, I think, a big percentage of media in Africa, a huge chunk of it, if you say that. If you're African, you've definitely grown up on DSTV, my friend. You've grown up on the Cartoon Network. You've watched Mnet. You've watched ETV. You've watched Maisha Magic and all those other channels that have been on DSTV. I feel like it's every African child's birthright to watch DSTV, because that was our form of entertainment. We didn't have tablets, we didn't have phones. We were just kids who would play during the day, and in the evening before you sleep, you have 30 minutes or an hour of watch time, and most of us had DSTV. And this is funny, but where I come from, having a DSTV decoder was also like a measurement of how well off you were. So if you went to school and said, hey, I have DSTV back at home, then you were given some form of respect and whatnot. You know what? But let's get started. MultiChoice may be or will be, it hasn't happened yet, but it's in the process of happening. So there's a certain company called Canel Plus that wants to acquire MultiChoice and all its subsidiaries under it. So MultiChoice has Showmax, which I love, by the way. I love the South African shows on the Showmax. It has Showmax, it has DSTV that has all those channels, the sports channels. I mean, watching sports in Africa, you literally had to, upgrade your package and pay for like the Premium League. Is it Premier League? You had to upgrade your package and pay for the Premier League so that you can, be fancy and whatnot. So it has DSTV, it has Showmax, and then it has GoTV, which is quite common in Africa because like you either have either or, you either have one of, you know how Netflix is common in every household. Yes, you either have DSTV, you either have GoTV, or you have Showmax. It's something. Now DSTV, like I said, it hasn't yet happened, but Canel Plus is looking at buying it. Now here's a funny story, right? So South Africa has a law where where a foreign company can't control a huge chunk of its media, right? Of its media corporations. But Canel Plus has surpassed the 20% that the South African government had put aside for foreign companies to be able to acquire in their media, territory and whatnot. So it's now looking at 49, and it offered to buy out its shareholders. So it offered 1.6 billion to its shareholders for them to basically give up their rights, give up their shares. It went above and beyond, and if it offered more of what the share price was in the market, it said, hey, I can top that. All you have to do is sell your shares so that this French company, so that it can own this African huge company, by the way. So I want you guys to watch the clip that goes into detail about that, and then I will tell you why I am here today.
The MultiChoice Group is considering the buyout by French firm Canel Plus. The French company has recently bought more shares in the JSE-listed broadcaster. MultiChoice has told investors that it is working closely with the Canel Plus on a mandatory offer to be made to shareholders. Earlier this year, Canel Plus triggered a mandatory offer under the South African rules by acquiring more than 35% of MultiChoice's shares. Canel Plus's stake is now 36.6%. The company has previously said that it will offer MultiChoice shareholders 125 Rand a share in cash. This is significantly above the minimum price of the 105 Rand required by takeover regulations. If the deal isn't finalized today, then it could be terminated. And if shareholders with at least 90% of eligible MultiChoice shares accept Canel Plus's offer, then the French firm reserves the right to delist.
You've heard what the lovely lady had to tell us. This clip is from SABC News, that is a South African news outlet. Shout out to them. But when I saw this story, actually a friend of mine sent me this story. It's like, hey Joanne, can you do something on this? Can you like do a reaction on this? I said, you know what, I may just do that because we love DSTV growing up. DSTV raised, I mean, half of us out there. If you're African, you know what I mean. Even if you're not African, I'm sure like if you have an attachment to a certain corporation that is linked to your childhood, you would feel a certain way if they told you that they've sold it away to a foreign corporation and you do not even know what will happen after they do that. Now, on paper, when I had this story and I did my research, I think the main question that you have to ask yourself is, what does this mean for like foreign? What does this mean for Africans? What does this mean for Africa in general? Is this a step towards being recolonized again? Are we giving out so much of our power to foreign corporations to again take control of this? Because let me tell you something, whoever controls the media controls the narrative. Because imagine, think of it, how many people do you think sit on their screens and they're watching something? I know some people who can't even eat without picking something to watch. Now imagine how much control the media has over such people, how much the media can spin whatever story it is that they want, you know. And this is why when we hear that a certain African corporation is or may to be bought off, it stops us in our steps, because it gets you thinking like, hey, if they're coming for the media corporations, MultiChoice is not water, guys. MultiChoice is like the big guns. When you hear MultiChoice, you put respect on MultiChoice, because the things they've done, the impact they have and the influence they have is up there. They have done as well. You know, we will talk about the things that they failed to do for Africans, but that's neither here nor there. But if they can come for a company like MultiChoice, ask yourself, do you think that you are safe where you are? Do you think that you have a fighting chance against foreign corporations? Do you think you have a fighting chance against, you know, being recolonized? Because when you look at it, it's just like, what is the interest in MultiChoice? Now, from a business standpoint, of course, you can say, hey, you know what? Business is business. MultiChoice is making the money, although it's profit making, the revenue has kind of gone down a bit, but that's because of like other streaming platforms and Netflix and whatnot. And the other thing that I do want to bring your attention is the risk to local content. Now, the content industry, I want to call it the content industry in Africa, has grown tremendously. It has grown to other levels. Like, I look at African content creators and I am inspired. Like, literally the other day I was just looking at content creators that I look up to. I was looking at that content, I'm like, oh my god, like I feel like I'm not doing enough and I need to be doing more. But I just want to say that the content has risen, and people like MultiChoice were putting African content creators on the map. I'll be specific and narrow in on Kansime, who I love, by the way. If you don't know the Muchiga girl, what are you waiting for? I almost said something in the local language, but like, what are you waiting for? Like, who doesn't know? Don't mess with Kansime. Right now, don't mess with Kansime. She is a big brand on her own. She's been on YouTube and whatnot, but she's also on MultiChoice. When you go to on DSTV, when you go through the channels, you can be able to find her program on Magic. I think Magic or Pearl Magic. Yes, Pearl Magic. Pearl Magic concentrates on content from the Pearl of Africa, which is Uganda. So someone like her being put on a platform like that kind of shows people like, hey, you know what? They are not limiting your representation. If a young African girl can see Anne Kansime on the screen and see what this girl is able to do with her comedy, with her dramatic skits, you know, the people she's able to put on. When you come from behind the scenes of production, you also think of how much money goes into things like that, how many people she has employed through her work, and so on and so forth. Like, what is now going to happen to that aspect of African content if they take if they are to be sold to a foreign company, a French-speaking company at that? I wanted to find out what's the sudden interest. Like, French and English, they're so separate, my friend. It's just like, what are you gonna say? Bonjour, how are you? Like, even that communication is gonna be a bit difficult, you know. Like, how are they going to do business? But of course, the interpreters and whatnot. It begs the question: will we see more of our African stories, or are we going to see more of like European and French stories. Is that what is going to happen? I mean, they made promise like, hey, you know what? Nothing's going to happen to you. But when you go down the road, what is going to happen to local content creators? What is going to happen to African stories? You know, they made as well just bury us and say, to hell with you and your stories. We are westernized. We've come with something better. Maybe this is what the people want, and give the people what they want. Guys, I just remember the Food Network. If you remember Seba's Table, like, who has not watched Seba's Table? We've all got recipes of Seba's Tables. I liked watching the Food Network just to sit at home and just like see cooking recipes. I feel like there's a part of me that learned how to cook off DSTV. You know, it was my way of relaxing. Now, will they take away how to make our pap, which is posho, which is ugali, and teach us croissants? Watch this clip.
All over the world, in every country and every culture, storytelling has significant power. The stories that we are told via books, our screens and advertising build identities, determine behaviours and forge our dreams. American researchers found that stories repeated in our minds actually interact with our biology. Our brains need shortcuts to simplify and organise information and data constantly coming at us. They impact how we view the world and make meaning from what we perceive. The narrative we tell and are told has the potential to create and continue prejudiced beliefs by those few who dominate the storytelling sphere. So, what dangerous ways has this materialised itself in the media and advertising? The British Film Institute found that between 2006 and 2016, of around 45,000 roles credited to actors in the UK, only 0.5% were played by Black British actors. Not seeing yourself represented often leads to self-imposed limitations on what you can achieve and allows for negative perceptions to go unchallenged. And when Black people are represented, there are many reoccurring racialised tropes, most of which can be traced back to colonialism, historic anti-Blackness, and the legacy of slavery. 64% of UK crime films has featured roles for Black actors, and 15% of all films featuring Black actors between 2006 and 2016 focused on crime narratives. You've probably come across a few other stereotypes within a range of film, TV shows and adverts. The mammy, the Jezebel, the angry, sassy Black woman, the stoic, the gangster, the angry Black man and the Black best friend. These notions of who Black people are were created by white storytellers throughout history, carefully crafted to dehumanize and erase the multiplicity of Black people's existence. Take, for example, one of the most historical tropes, the mammy. Academy Award-winning Hattie McDaniel famously played this role in Gone with the Wind in 1939. Her performance as a loyal, subservient caregiver had been created by white American storytellers to distance themselves from the harsh reality of race relations in a post-slavery society. In light of the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, the streaming platform HBO Max removed the film due to the racist depictions, later republishing it with disclaimers about the historical context and warnings about racial stereotypes in the film. In current pop culture, we are often shown racist caricatures, the angry Black woman we see on reality TV, and the hyper-violent Black man in gritty documentaries. These depictions are in part informed by colorism, a phrase coined by the author and activist Alice Walker, which means the prejudiced treatment of those within the Black community who have darker skin.
So you've seen that clip. I liked a few things that she said, because she said like representation matters, especially in the media, because media kind of controls everything, like I've mentioned time and time again. Guys, media controls everything. If I was such a malicious person and decided to come up with all the misinformation that I could, and I came here and I said all the misinformation, someone out there is going to believe my misinformation. If I didn't do my due diligence and research and decided to just run with whatever comes to my mind, someone out there may believe me. Guys, us owning, listen, African people of African descent, when they take away our power to represent ourselves in the media, they're basically barring us. They're barring us and they're barring our stories. They're barring what we could say. They're barring who we could inspire or who we could motivate, you know? they're burying that little girl's dream and kind of narrowing it down for everyone and putting us in a box. Because imagine if we just stopped seeing African stories or African media on TV. And now we're just seeing some foreign people, you know? Like, how would that end, you know? There's a point that I wanted to bring out too. I also wanted to bring out economic dependency. I already mentioned that if they can take out the big gun like MultiChoice, then you, a normal person. I also want to talk about economic dependency because if a company as big as MultiChoice, if a company as robust as, by the way, MultiChoice was like a monopoly, you know, like they monopolized the media industry in that they were the ones providing that service. They went ahead to like say, you know what, you guys are streaming something, let's give you another platform to stream from. They introduced Showmax, you know, they competed with the likes of Netflix and whatnot. They introduced GoTV, a cheaper version of DSTV. They made sure they were accessible to each and everyone. Now, if a South African company that has been the beacon of African entrepreneurship in media goes down, if it is to go down, if it does go down, what does that say about our future? Like, what does that say about each, like a normal person like you and I, you know? If a company like that, which by the way had a huge chunk of the market, which had monopolized everything in its way, can't stay independent in a global market, what does that mean for us? You know, what does that mean for the normal person? And it brings up the question. It's like, is African success only sustainable by foreign money? Can Africans only stay afloat if we're being backed by foreign capital? Like, is that where we're going? You know, are we going to be dependent on foreign capital all our lives? Even for the things that we own, listen, they're going to take everything. You better wake up. You better open your eyes. On the other side, is this good for competition? You know, people on Twitter were a bit mad about what had happened with DSTV. They were mad with DSTV and they were mad with MultiChoice. They said it didn't give them a variety and the shows were kind of repetitive, which is true. I mean, the times they would show a show for years, like I would go to school, come back and find on the same show. So lots of people were not happy with that. But then some people are saying, hey, maybe this could be a good thing and maybe this will like bring about good competition, you know, and maybe some other smaller emerging African empires or companies can be on the come up and now can compete. I want to, the purpose of this video is to kind of give you guys like a broad picture. Okay, so I also want to show the rise and fall of MultiChoice. I want you guys to first see how MultiChoice started and maybe what could lead to the fall of it. To some people it's seen as the fall, but to me I just see it as changing times, because one thing with this world, it's changing all the time.
If you live in Africa, chances are you've seen these billboards. They're advertising DSTV and GoTV, two of the continent's most popular pay TV services. But behind these familiar brands is a company you might not know as well, MultiChoice. MultiChoice is a media powerhouse, reaching over 15 million subscribers across more than 50 countries and generating over $3 billion in annual revenue. But how did this African giant come to be? And more importantly, can it survive in the age of streaming?
After more than 3 decades of dominating the market, the African pay TV heavyweight MultiChoice Group is facing an interesting if uncertain future.
MultiChoice Group says profit for the 6 months ended in September came in lower by 5%.
South Africa's MultiChoice Group has rejected a proposed takeover offer from Vivendi Canel Plus, saying the price undervalued the business.
To understand MultiChoice, we need to go back to 1976. That's when South Africa, believe it or not, finally introduced television.
Yes, the 5th of January 1976 has finally arrived, and with it the birth of a full television service.
While other African countries like Nigeria and Zimbabwe had TV in the late 1950s and early 1960s, South Africa was the latecomer to the game. The reason being, the apartheid government saw TV as a threat to their racial segregation policies. When TV did arrive, it shook up the media landscape. Naspers, South Africa's largest print media company, knew they needed to adapt or risk becoming obsolete. Naspers' solution came from a man named Kusbeka. Whilst he was completing his MBA at Columbia University, he put together a project paper detailing the concept of setting up a pay TV service in sub-Saharan Africa. Becker pitched this idea to Naspers, and in 1986, a pay TV service called Mnet was born. Mnet quickly gained popularity with shows like Carte Blanche and the launch of SuperSport, sub-Saharan Africa's first dedicated sports channel. In 1993, Naspers created MultiChoice to manage Mnet's operations, but the real game changer came in 1995. That's when MultiChoice launched DSTV, Digital Satellite Television. It was Africa's first digital satellite pay TV service, and it changed everything. Within 2 years, DSTV had over 100,000 subscribers across 5 countries. How? By leveraging satellite technology to reach areas traditional television could not. As MultiChoice grew, so did Africa's entertainment industry. The company invested heavily in producing local content, launching channels like Africa Magic and Channel O. Africa Magic is a collection of channels that broadcast films and television shows produced in Africa. Channel O, on the other hand, is a music channel dedicated to showcasing the top music videos from African artists. These efforts exposed African artists and entertainers to millions of new listeners and viewers. By 2021, Africa's film and TV industry was employing nearly 5 million people and contributing over $5 billion to the continent's GDP. However, the streaming revolution soon followed. Netflix, Amazon Prime, and others started making inroads into Africa. In response, MultiChoice launched its own streaming service, Showmax, in 2015. Despite this, MultiChoice has seen a consistent decline in its premium subscriber base since 2000.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that video, that clip, was able to shed a light on MultiChoice, because I didn't want you thinking MultiChoice is just that. MultiChoice is more than MultiChoice. And it being the potential of it being bought out, meaning they are buying shares from everyone and taking ownership of the company it's not, for an African, it's very saddening, I will say. I personally don't feel good about the potential buyout, but I want to hear from you too. What is your thought on this? How do you feel about MultiChoice being potentially bought out by Canel Plus, a French foreign company buying an African company, not even in a French speaking company? It's just why, friend? Where are you going with this? Would you think Canel Plus will understand the African audience? Do you think people are going to stay with their jobs? Do you think people are going to be let go? Do you think it's going to be able to retain the audience? First of all, don't take away MultiChoice in all that you do. Leave MultiChoice alone. I love MultiChoice, friend. I genuinely do. I love South African shows. And the only way I can get to see such shows, such series, and enjoy them is on Showmax, the authentic. These are shows also on the come up. It's not too much. It's just okay, now let's hear the story. What's the story, friend? Is this the beginning of the end of African owned media? I will repeat that question. Is this the beginning of African owned media? Is this the beginning of the end of African owned media? Is this the end for African stories? Is this the end for African representations? Those are the questions that I want you to take away from this episode. I hope that you learned something. I come on here, I say I'm a student of life. I come on here to teach. I come on here to learn. And I know people always teach me in the comments, oh, Jonita, da, da. Someone actually mentioned that I should go ahead and read all, that I'm intelligent, but I haven't read all these books. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I was actually a good literature student. I can read a book in 2 days if I want to. I just don't have the time. But yeah, I have read most of the books here. Other books are on the come up, I'm halfway there, or they've bored me and I've put them down. But you know how the reading culture is. You drop one, you pick one. So yeah, I will see you guys next time. I hope that you have taken the time out to subscribe. Do the nice thing and subscribe. Take a minute and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Do all the nice things. Hit the bell for notifications. Give this video a like. I'm trying to boost my videos, but it's a drought over here on YouTube, but we keep pushing on because such is life, and we keep moving forward. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.